The night in Nicolay Forest. I was never one to believe in ghost stories or urban legends. To me, the forest was just a place of peace where I could escape the city noise and listen to the wind whispering through the trees. But on that autumn night in 2013, in Wisconsin's Nicolay National Forest, something happened that changed that forever. It was around midnight. I had decided to camp alone, something I often did to disconnect. The trail I chose was one of the lesser-known ones, winding through tall, dense pines where the moonlight barely pierced the canopy. My flashlight cut through the darkness, casting shadows that danced between the trunks. The air was cold, carrying the damp scent of earth and fallen leaves. Everything seemed normal, until it didn't. I was about 2 kilometers from my campsite when I felt wrong. I can't explain it, but it was like the air had grown heavier, as if someone was watching me. I stopped, swung my flashlight around, but saw only trees and darkness. The chirping of crickets, steady until then, ceased all at once. The silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. That's when I saw it. Standing in the middle of the trail, about 30 feet ahead, was a figure. Tall, very tall, easily over 7 feet. Thin as a brittle branch, with arms that seemed to stretch all the way to the ground. Its skin, if you could call it that, was pale, almost glowing under the faint moonlight. But what froze me in place was the face, or rather, the lack of one. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. Just a smooth, white surface, like a blank mask. It stood there, motionless, as if staring at me, even without eyes. I was paralyzed. My flashlight shook in my hand, the beam trembling across its body. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body refused to move. Then I blinked. Just a quick, panicked reflex. And when my eyes opened, it was gone. The trail was empty. No sound, only the wind returning to its whisper, and the crickets resuming their song, as if nothing had happened. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at nothing. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes. When I finally managed to move, I ran back to camp, stumbling over roots, branches tearing at my clothes. I locked myself in my tent, gripping my camping knife as if it could protect me from whatever that was. I didn't sleep that night. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, sent my heart racing. By morning, I packed up and left. I reported what I'd seen to the local police, expecting them to laugh. But the officer just wrote down my account with a serious look. He said others had reported strange things in that forest. Shadows, figures that appeared and vanished. Nothing ever proven, but the rumors lingered. A year later, in 2014, Nicolay Forest gained notoriety for another reason. 2 girls from Waukesha, a nearby city, attacked a friend, claiming a figure like the one I saw. Tall, faceless, known to them as Slender Man, had ordered them to do it. When I read about the case, my stomach turned. I knew Slender Man was supposed to be an internet legend, a story made up on forums to scare people. But what I saw that night wasn't a story. It was real. Or at least, my mind convinced me it was. To this day, I haven't returned to that trail. Sometimes, I dream about him, the faceless figure, standing still, watching me. And every now and then, when I'm alone at night, I feel that same heaviness in the air, as if something is still out there, waiting. Maybe it's only my imagination. Maybe. The night of the Midnight Man. I've been a taxi driver for over 20 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the night holds secrets the daylight will never reveal. Back in 1972, I worked the streets of Juiz de Fora in Minas Gerais, driving along the dusty rural roads that cut through the outskirts of the city. Times were simpler then. Fewer lights, fewer people, and far more darkness. And it was on one of those dark nights that I encountered him. It was close to midnight, and I was heading back from a long ride, having dropped off a passenger at the bus station. The rural road I took was nothing but packed dirt, bordered by tall weeds and twisted trees. There were no streetlights, only the weak glow of my headlights cutting through the gloom. I was tired, thinking about the dinner waiting at home, when I noticed something by the roadside. A figure, tall, draped in a black cloak that seemed to swallow the very light around it. It stood still, head lowered, as if waiting for someone. I thought it might be a traveler in need of help. It wasn't unusual to find lost people on those roads at night. I turned off the engine, rolled down the window, and called out, "Hey, you okay out there?" No response. The figure didn't move. A shiver crawled up my spine, but I insisted, thinking maybe the person was hurt. I stepped out of the car, leaving the headlights shining, and walked toward the figure. That's when I noticed something strange. The cloak seemed to float, weightless, and beneath the hood, I couldn't see a face, just darkness. "Need a ride, friend?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. And then it happened. The figure lifted its head, and I swear the air around me turned ice cold. There were no eyes, no mouth, just an empty void that seemed to pull me in. Before I could say another word, it was gone. Not faded, not fled, it simply vanished. As if it had never been there, I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo in the silence. Then came the sound, a laugh, low, muffled, drifting from the brush to my left. But it wasn't a laugh like any human I've ever heard. It was sharp, shrill, mocking, like it was taunting me. I spun around, searching the dark undergrowth, but the weeds stood still, untouched. Panic surged through me. I bolted back to the taxi, slammed the doors shut, and started the engine with trembling hands. As I sped away, the laughter seemed to follow me, echoing along the road, until, at last, it faded. The next day, I told some of the other drivers at the taxi stand. Most laughed, said I was making it up. But an old driver, a man who knew those rural roads better than I ever did, didn't laugh. His face turned serious. He told me about the Midnight Man, a legend whispered around Juiz de Fora long before I was born. He said he appeared on the rural roads at exactly midnight, and whoever met him was never the same again. Some believed he was the ghost of a bandit who died there decades ago. Others claimed he was a vengeful spirit. No one knew for sure, but everyone avoided that road at night. I never took that road again after my shift. Even now, when I drive at night, I keep the windows rolled up and my eyes fixed straight ahead. But sometimes, in the silence. The night of the forest watcher. I've always been a man of the land. I grew up on the slopes of the Serra da Gardunha in Portugal, tending sheep just as my father and his father did before him. The mountain range is my home. I know every trail, every rock, every sound the wind makes as it weaves through the pines. But one night in 2007, when the new moon left the sky as black as coal, the mountain showed me something I will never forget. It was late, maybe around 10 o'clock at night. I was guiding my flock back to the pen near the village of Tinalis. The lantern in my hand swung back and forth, casting its weak glow along the dirt path, while the sheep followed in silence, as if they sensed something I couldn't. The air was cold, carrying that damp scent of moss and stone the mountains exude after rain. Then, without warning, the sheep froze. All of them at once. They're calm creatures, but now they stood stiff, as though staring at something invisible to me. That's when I heard it. A heavy sound, like a chain being dragged across the forest floor. It came from the woods to my right, where the oaks grow so close together that not even moonlight filters through. I raised my lantern, but its beam revealed nothing but trunks and shadows. The dragging sound stopped, and for a moment I told myself it was a wild boar or some other nocturnal animal. But then I felt it, an oppressive weight in the air, as though something was watching me, waiting. I lifted my eyes, and there it was, a figure, taller than any man I had ever seen, standing between two trees about 50 feet away. It was thin, with arms that seemed unnaturally long, but what froze me in place were its eyes. Two glowing points, like burning embers, cutting through the darkness. It wasn't reflected light. It wasn't an animal. It was something, staring at me as if it knew who I was. My lantern trembled in my hand, but I couldn't look away. The figure stayed there, unmoving, for several seconds. Then, as if carried off by the wind, it was gone. It didn't run, didn't hide. It simply wasn't there anymore. The sheep began bleating nervously, and I drove them back toward the village, stumbling over rocks and glancing over my shoulder with every step. I don't even know how I reached the pen, but when I shut the gate, my hands were still shaking. I didn't sleep. I sat awake with the lantern by my side, listening to every sound drifting from the mountain. The next day, I told a few neighbors at the village tavern what I had seen. I expected laughter, but instead they exchanged serious looks. An old shepherd, long retired from the trails, spoke in a hushed tone. It was the forest watcher. He explained that the mountain had always been tied to such stories, figures appearing on moonless nights, eyes glowing in the darkness. Some say it's an ancient spirit. Others whisper about strange lights in the sky, like visitors from another world. Garduña has always been known for its mysteries, and no one doubts those who claim to have seen something. I never return to that trail at night. I take my flock along different paths now, even if they're longer. But sometimes, when the wind blows hard and the mountain grows too quiet, I feel those eyes on me again, as if the watcher is still there, waiting, observing me from the shadows.